Hello, my name is Jason Steffenhagen, and I am the Associate Minister at the Well, United Methodist Church in Rosemont, Minnesota. And you are listening to a presentation on how to create a podcast, especially if you're a church or a leader who has an existing recording. Maybe you publish on Facebook or on YouTube, and you are trying to get your content into a podcast format so it's a little bit easier for people to find when they are just scrolling through their podcasts and they want to listen to your sermon for the week, or they want to listen to your worship service. This would be an accessible way for them to find it in a podcast feed, as opposed to just going to your website or needing to go on Facebook. So let's dive in. So I'm going to presume a few things, and this will change for some of you. Number one, I'm going to presume that you are using YouTube. And so I'm going to use YouTube as my place for grabbing my information. The second thing that I'm going to be using is a Mac computer. Now, this will all change if you are not using a Mac. So if you are not using a Mac, then you can turn this off right now. So let's assume those couple of things and go from there. So first off, here I am on my YouTube site. My name is Jason Steffenhagen. And to get to your channel, you click on your icon up in the top right, and then you click on your channel. And this will bring up a list of videos. And I'm going to use a video that I recorded a number of years ago of my son when he was just a few months old, and it's him giggling for 30 seconds. Unfortunately for you, I will not be playing this video as it's super cute, but we're not going to be going down that path. I just want to show you how to take that video and turn it into a podcast. So you have your video, you click on it and open it up, and then you can see the video there, and you click on Edit Video down in that lower right-hand corner. If you are at all curious during this presentation of where I'm at, just look for the red circle, because that's what I will be tracking as I go. So click Edit Video. This brings you into this very highly involved page. And then you want to key on the three dots in the top right-hand corner. Click on those and hit download. And when it downloads, it'll become an MP4 file, as you can see in that bottom right-hand corner. So once it becomes an MP4 file, you're going to click on it, and it should pop up in QuickTime on your Mac computer. If I'm moving too fast, just rewind 30 seconds and go ahead and listen to this again. But once you hit download and you open the download, it will become a MP4 file under QuickTime. Then you click on File on QuickTime, and you go to Export As, and you can pick either 720p or 480p. It doesn't matter, either one. I click on the video, and the reason why is because I'm not the greatest editor ever, and I just had to figure this out during the pandemic on my own and didn't talk to really many people. I just tried to figure this out. So this is not the most expert presentation ever on how to do this. This is me figuring it out and helping you figure it out. There are probably many other videos out there that could help you do this. This is how I chose to do it, and it works for me. So I click on one of the two video formats, whichever one you want, and I have to title it. So making a podcast, hit save. And then I'm going to click down here in the launch pad, and I'm going to bring up iMovie. Now, most Macs will come with iMovie, or it's easily downloadable for free. Click on iMovie, and it brings you to your list of projects. Maybe you don't have any projects. So then you're going to hit your first one, or you're going to create a new one. So we create a new one. We want it to be a movie. And then this is what that page will look like before you have any information. It will look like this. So then you're going to hit the Import Media button, and then you're going to come to a list of options. You want it to be under yourself, and you want to find that download. And remember, you retitled it when you were in QuickTime. And so you're going to go to your downloads. And once you open that up, you're going to want to find the one that you saved earlier. And for me, it was making a podcast. So I double click on that, and it brings it up as a small icon at the top of your iMovie page. So then you drag it down to where it says drag and drop video clips and photos from the browser above. So you do that, and there it is. It's all right there for you, both the video, which is the picture, and the audio, which is kind of that wavy line that you can see in the blue area. Then you're going to want to change the settings a little bit, because right now it's all crammed together. That whole 30 seconds is existing right there. But by going to the settings, if I hold down on the little gray bar and I move it to the right, it extends everything out, making it as long as possible, which gives me the most to work with. Now, when you look at this video, it doesn't look like much. It kind of is the same image in a way, with a little bit of waviness in the blue line. Well, if I wanted to cut out some of the dead space is where there is no light blue line that is existing. And so what you can do is you can hit the R button and then hold down your cursor and highlight a section. That's what the yellow part is you are highlighting a section by holding down the letter R and then moving to the right, and it makes it yellow. And then you can hit something like delete, and it deletes it, and that goes away. And then you now have shortened your video. You've shortened your presentation. So now let's say I want to add something like a pre-made introduction. So I have my audio content for my sermon, but I want to have an introduction to this service. So maybe I've pre-recorded, made a video where it says, hey, welcome to the Well. We're so glad that you're listening to a podcast by us, and we're excited for you to be listening to this week's sermon. So now I want to download that and add it to this. So I hit the download button, which is up in the top left-hand corner. I go into my downloads, and as you can see, there's a number of different things there. And then I'm going to click on the one that I want. And I pulled from a podcast that I'm a part of called Searching the Sacred. And so here's a 1 minute and 20-second little introduction, and I can just pull it in and download it into the rest of my presentation that I'm working on. Now I want to do that again with a picture. And so I go ahead and do that again. This is another podcast I'm a part of called Deconstructing the Bible. And so I add that in as the end of the presentation. And why would I do that? Why would I want to end with something? Well, I wanted to add a picture because that gives me room to add some audio, because maybe I want to end with a little bit of music at the end as people are finishing the podcast. So I go to my download button again and I go into music. But how do you get music? Well, here's a fun way to do it. Here's a website called pixabay.com/music, and it has free music downloads. And so I've picked one out called Penguin Music Modern Chill Out because I thought it sounded really good. I hit the play button there to test it out. And then when I'm ready to download it, I go ahead and download. And so that's a fun way to download music that's free, royalty-free music. And so if I go to my download section when I'm in iMovie, I can then find the audio file that I've downloaded for music. And there it is, Penguin Music /Modern Chill Out. So I click on that and it adds it in as a wavy audio file to iMovie. I then drag that down below the pictures that I have, and it adds it in as an audio file. And now I can move that audio file just by clicking on it anywhere and moving it left or right. I can also lower the volume on it. So I click on that light gray line in the middle of the audio file and I pull it down to the level that I want. And so now you can see I've brought it down low and it's at about 13%. That way, if there's any speaking as a part of my video, like my son's laughter, if I were to play the music, it wouldn't dominate what you are hearing. I can also do a little trimming of this to make certain parts louder than others. So for instance, if I want to fade the music up as the podcast ends, what I can do is do the same thing I did earlier when I was editing the video. I can hit the R button and I can drag the selection left or right. And so here I am dragging it to the right, and that highlights a certain section. Then I click on the gray bar and I move it up. And as you can see, the audio has been moved up in that middle section. And then those dots allow me to move how quickly I want the fade up or the fade down to go. So if I move the dots, away from each other, that means the fade up is going to be slower. If I move them closer to each other, that means it's going to be more quicker. So once I have things finished and I feel good about my presentation, I hit the projects button up in the top left. And that brings me back to naming it, which is how to make a podcast. Hit OK. And then I have that as a movie in iMovie. And now I want to download it as an audio file only in a format that works for podcasting. So I click on the three little dots there, and I want to go to Share Project, click on File, and that brings me to this page. And I want to go to the format to make sure that it says audio only instead of video and audio. So audio only. And then file format, I want to click on MP3. So I want it to be an MP3 file. Once I click on that, I hit OK, and then I have to name it, How to Make a Podcast. I hit save. And now if you'll notice, it's going to be in the document section of my Mac computer. So I know it's going to be in documents. I know it's titled How to Make a Podcast. So I hit save. Now I need somewhere to host my podcast. I've used a couple of different hosting sites. Podbean is one that we're going to use today. I've also used Buzzsprout. Those two seem to work really well with all major podcast carriers like iTunes and Spotify and others. So you go to podbean.com, and then you're going to go to sign up for free. So I sign up for free and I create an account. Once I get to an account page, it's going to look similar to this. It'll have your account name in there. It'll have 0 episodes. And then you're going to click on new episode. Click on new episode, and it's going to ask you to choose a file to upload. So you click on choose a file to upload, and it's going to bring you to your list of files. Now, it's going to pull you into the download section, but remember, I saved mine in documents. So I need to click on documents, and then I'm going to find How to Make a Podcast. And I want to make sure it's the MP3 file because that's the audio file that I want. So How to Make a Podcast, the MP3 file. Now, that name, MP3 or How to Make a Podcast, isn't going to convert very well with Podbean. So it's going to ask you to rename it. And all that does is just put a little underscore in the blank spaces of the title. And so that's fine because I'm not actually titling it. This is just a file name. And so I hit OK. And then you can see that little green bar is downloading it into this episode. So now I have to do a little titling in order to make this podcast something kind of fun. So How to Make a Podcast is my title. I'm going to give a description. Hopefully this is helping. And then I want to add a little bit to this. So I'm going to hit more episode settings, and I'm going to make sure that I can do this by season. So maybe you're going to have the year, right? So season number 1 is the year 2022 for you. And then this is episode number 1. And that's how you're going to label and help people keep track of where you are in the podcast season that you're on or the services that you have. Finally, some of you are going to do this ahead of time. And so you're going to want to figure out when you want to publish your podcast. So you hit the little arrow button there, and you can either hit publish now, which means it'll publish immediately, or you could go to schedule your episode. So let's say you finish editing your podcast and it's all ready to go. You have the title, the description, but you want it to release on a Tuesday morning. And so you can schedule when you want it to release. You pick the date, you pick the hour, the minute, and then you hit OK. And then you can just hit schedule podcast. So in this instance, I'm going to hit publish now. And so there it is up there in the list of podcasts that I have coming out. This one's scheduled to be released in the future on March 1st. I'm recording this actually on March 1st because I did this presentation a few days ago. So once I know that is ready, the question is, well, how do I make sure this is distributed on a podcast carrier? So I'm going to hit distribution. The pull down menu is going to pop up, and I want podcast apps. If I click on podcast apps, you can see a number of different ways in which podcasts are released. So Apple Podcasts, Google, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, just to name a few. And so those are the ones that I want to have my podcast on because that's the way people are going to find my podcast. And so you click on Apple Podcasts and you just follow each of those prompts to figure out how to do it. Now, there's something you will probably need in order to do that effectively. And so we want to go to settings. So if you click on settings and then you click on feed, it will pull you to this page. And here's where you can have a subtitle for your podcast, a summary of your podcast, but most importantly, it's going to give you the RSS feed. Now, this is what most major podcast distributors are going to need in order for you to have your podcast loaded on their site. And that is located right here. So you can see that it's an HTTPS ://feed.podbean.com. And then it'll have the name of your podcast. And you can just click on that, right click on it and hit copy. And then when you go back into your distribution, that's what you will likely need to enter into places like Apple. Now, each of those podcast distributors is going to be a little bit more involved than others. It's going to have you jump through a few hoops. You just kind of have to follow directions, maybe do a little research on how you're doing things. If you ever need help, you can always reach out to me, Jason Steffenhagen at The Well, and I'd be happy to help you. But this has been how to start a podcast from YouTube for those of you that are videoing your sermons and want to figure out, how do I get this into a podcast? So thanks for checking this out, and I hope that it was helpful.